Well, g'day and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I want to explain why I couldn't get a sharp shot with the Canon R7 and 200-800. Nearly every shot I took was completely unusable. And I think some of you have experienced this before, where you go out, you have a session and nearly all the shots are soft. So I want to try and delve into why this has happened. Now I want to preface this by saying I have taken lots of very sharp shots with this combo, including this pink robin. I love the detail, I love the sharpness, just overall fantastic. But I just want to share my experience where I just couldn't get a sharp shot. So let me share the story with you. I'm working on my review for the 200-800. I realized I needed far more shots with the Canon R7 because many of you have this. So I checked the weather, there was no wind, there was no clouds, and I thought I'll go to my favorite duck pond. So I got up at 4:30 a.m. I drove 45 minutes in the dark. I got to the location, all excited, ready in anticipation. I actually spotted the moon. The moon was nice and bright, pretty much a full moon. So I thought I'll take some shots of the full moon with this combo just to see how sharp and detailed the moon would be at 800mm. And remember, we're at an APS-C body, so 1.6. That gives us 1280mm field of view. Focal length hasn't changed, it's just our field of view has. So I did that. I took some shots of the moon, and here's the shot. And I couldn't be happier. The detail is excellent. You can see the craters. It's just a wonderful shot and shows you what's possible with this lens. So I'd taken that shot. I was quite confident of what was ahead. And because I was filming a video, I had to capture lots of B-roll. I filmed myself with the intro explaining exactly what was going on. I had a look around. I could see a swan. I could see a spoonbill. I could see ducks. It was all happening and I was very, very excited. So I've walked with my boots that I mentioned in my last video through the mud to the spot which I thought would deliver the best possible photos, the best location. So using my ground pod and my gimbal, I've laid down, I've put the monitor on to record the autofocus. I was ready to go. Now, the first subject I saw were a couple of Australasian grebes, so a very small little bird, and they weren't that far away. So I've engaged the autofocus, and the autofocus really struggled. Like, it just wouldn't stay on the subject, and you can see that in this EVF footage. It would just go on, off, and I was a little bit surprised by that. I thought, that's unusual. Why is it so bad? It just doesn't want to stick to the subject. Anyway, I took a number of shots of those grebes, and unfortunately, nearly every single one of them was soft, and they just weren't really usable. Now, part of it was because I messed up the exposure. I underexposed it by a stop. We didn't have a lot of light, so there was never going to be a lot of detail. However, the exposure shouldn't impact the sharpness of the image, and this is just an awful image. So slightly disappointing, but anyway, I've noticed the sun start coming through the trees and it's lit up the water. I've turned around and I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely beautiful. We had some coots sort of swimming through this beautiful sunlit water. We've got a bit of fog coming off the water, and I thought, oh, hopefully I can get a good shot here. I've turned around, faced the camera, and again the autofocus just struggled, and it was just having a hard time picking up the coot. I thought maybe because it's backlit, maybe because there's a bit of fog, it just didn't want to cooperate. But I took a heap of shots anyway because I really wanted to nail that shot of the coot in that interesting scene. And unfortunately, again, these shots were all soft. And I'll share with you my vision and the photo that I got. And as you can see, it's just lacking all detail. It's muddy and it's no good. This is starting to get very, very frustrating. So the sun by now is starting to come up. I've turned around and there's a beautiful black swan swimming through this beautiful light, and I'm thinking, oh, this will be fantastic. Focusing again, the autofocus is struggling a bit, but I do manage to land on the eye, and I take a few shots and they're all soft again, but then it dawns on me. I notice something in the EVF. I notice this shimmer. I notice this haze. What is it? It's heat haze. And I'm thinking, why is there heat haze? It's 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock. I've never really experienced heat haze here before. So it had me confused. Why is this heat haze so bad? You can see the whole image is just shimmering and the heat haze is moving. So you're never ever going to get a sharp shot in these conditions. It's pretty much impossible. So what's causing this heat haze? Well, my simple understanding is we have a variation in the temperature of the air layers, basically. So if the temperature of the air underneath is warm and the air above is cold, there's a variation. This variation causes heat haze because of the way I think it reflects the light. Now, if I think about logically, what happened in my situation is we're in summer here in Australia. It gets very warm. Our days are around 35 degrees or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so very, very hot. This is heating up the water, this is heating up the ground, and overnight our temperatures are usually 16 on average. This morning, I remember noticing that it was very cold and I was happy to put the jacket on. And when I look online, the temperature was 8 degrees, so half the average. So we had 35 during the day. I believe water conducts heat or holds heat better. Therefore, the air above the water was warmish, and the cold 8-degree air coming down was much, much colder. And when they hit each other, it caused this heat haze, and this is why all my photos were soft. Now, I just didn't anticipate this because I haven't really struck it that often in the morning. For me, I always thought heat haze is something you get in the afternoon with the really hot air, and you get this sort of wavy mirage type thing going on, which I've experienced numerous times. You can see in this ibis shot taken in the middle of the day, it's just wavy and awful. And interestingly, my good friend Jan shared a shot with me. He was using this 200-800 trying to photograph some little terns on the beach. Now the beach, as you can imagine, the sand gets very, very hot and the temperature above is not as warm, and therefore he got terrible severe heat haze and he got no sharp shots during this heat with these terns. It wasn't until the sun had started to go down, the temperature of the sand reduced, that he was able to get sharp shots. So that got me thinking, just how often are we impacted by heat haze? And I'd love to hear from you. How often have you been impacted by heat haze? What location are you in? Is it more of an Australian thing, or are you experiencing other parts of the world? What was the cause of it, and are you even aware of it? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And of interest, I actually got a comment from someone who said they just bought the 200-800 and every shot they took was soft. It turned out that their first session was shot from inside a car, shooting out, and obviously the car, I'm assuming, was on, so you've got this hot air coming out from the exhaust or the engine, and that's coming up next to the car. You're shooting through that, and there's obviously that variation in the temperature of the air, which has caused the heat haze. They then shot in a different scenario and the lens was sharp, and that's my experience as well. So just be aware that, you know, in certain circumstances, heat haze is going to ruin your photos. I didn't let that perturb me though. I thought, well, I need to keep shooting, and in theory, if we shoot above the water where the air is more consistent, I won't get the heat haze. So that's what I did. I thought I'll do bird in flight with these corellas, the little corellas, which are our cockatoos flying around. Very, very noisy bird. And they were coming down to drink, and I thought I'll try and get a flight shot as they're coming down. Unfortunately, the light was not the best and it was quite dark. So again, I had to use pretty high ISO, and again, that's the weakness of this lens. So I had to use a shutter speed of 1/2000th to try and freeze the wings as they're coming down, f9 fixed aperture, and I had to use an ISO of 3200, I think it was, which again is reasonably high. And I tried my best, and these birds were coming in. It was quite difficult, but we did get this one shot. And I'm actually really happy with the composition, the pose. I like everything about it, except the image quality. Unfortunately, due to the ISO 3200 and the low light, it's just very, very noisy. And as you can see, the final image looks pretty good, but once we actually zoom in on the raw file, you'll see that it's got quite a lot of noise, and I had to apply a lot of noise reduction to actually get this image presentable. And that's always something you're going to encounter with these slower lenses, especially on, say, an APS-C body that doesn't handle the noise as well. And that's why I kind of tend towards the R6 II and the R5, and certain low light at least, the ISO is just much, much better. But regardless, I'm happy enough with that photo. I just wish the image quality was a bit better. So what am I going to do? I need to shoot in better light, basically. If you've got better light, the f9's not as much of an issue. So that's what I did. I just photographed the corellas flying around, and I managed to get quite a few nice flight shots, and I'll share with them now. We've got the two birds flying at once, we've got a single bird, and we've even got the bird flying in front of the eucalypts, which I really like. And I'm very happy with all of these photos. The autofocus actually worked pretty well. Now, as my session was coming to an end, I did notice a purple swamp hen start walking out and feeding in some shallow water. And by this stage, a few hours had passed. I knew it was a lot hotter because I was getting warm. So I thought maybe there's not as much heat haze now because the temperature is equalizing. So I got down nice and low and I started to shoot this swamp hen, and the autofocus was fantastic. And as you can see, this is a shot we took. The detail is great. The sharpness is more than fine, and obviously the heat haze has dissipated and we were able to photograph the swamp hen. Now, the beauty of this zoom lens is I got that nice tight action shot of the swamp hen, and then I just simply zoomed out so I could get a reflection as it was feeding in the water. So we got a couple of really cool shots because of the flexibility of this lens, and it was a great way to end my session. And it just goes to show how impactful that heat haze is, and it's something we all need to be aware of as photographers. I think what's important is sometimes it's not immediately obvious that you have heat haze. So if we have a look at my Australasian grebe shot, it's soft, but you might be thinking, oh, maybe the camera lens is soft or it's just mist. It's not 100% obvious that it's heat haze. When we compare that to the black swan, it's obvious that this is heat haze. Now, the distance of the subject may be impacting that as well. Like the further away the subject, obviously there's more air in between. Perhaps that creates worse heat haze. Maybe these lenses have something to do with it. Let me know in the comments the scientific reason. Maybe the longer the focal length, the more you see heat haze, probably because your subject's further away. There's all these things that are going on that I don't fully understand, but it's something we should take into account when we're heading out into the field, especially if we've got these variations in air temperature. I think my advice is just to be aware of it. You know, if you're shooting by water, maybe roads or any surface that conducts a lot of heat and there's a variation in the air temperature, then you may encounter this heat haze. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's very, very annoying. And this might help alleviate any concerns you have about the sharpness of your gear. It could be heat haze impacting your images. And the only way to overcome heat haze is just not to shoot close to the ground when you see it or observe it. Maybe just shoot into the trees or shoot flight shots. That's the only way that you'll probably get sharp shots in that environment, or wait for the temperature to equalize like I did. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps explain a few things for those that weren't aware of heat haze. I'm now more conscious of it, I guess. And again, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Now, before I finish up, I am still working on the review for this lens. So if you've got any questions, be sure to put them down below. What I would love though is if you own this lens and you've taken a really nice shot that you want to share that could potentially turn up in the review, jump down into the description. I've actually already received a number of amazing images with this lens that I'm going to be excited to share more of them in that video, so be sure to do that. And just a very quick thank you to all the new and existing members that directly support the channel. If you're not aware, for less than a cup of coffee per month you can directly support me, and you can download the 2024 digital calendar for your iPad, your laptop, etc. And I really do appreciate that support. So until the next video, happy birding, take care, and see you later.